The town of Grey Rock sat high in the mountains like it had been placed there on purpose, far enough from the highways to feel protected, close enough to a single winding road to feel connected. Pine forest pressed against the last row of houses. Fog rolled in on a schedule. In winter, snow buried the shoulders of the road until the world looked narrowed and controlled, like a corridor you could defend. People here didn't talk about being isolated. They talked about being lucky. On most mornings, the only thing louder than the river below was the hum of cell towers. The new tower had gone up 2 years ago on a ridge to the east, a tall steel spine with fresh antenna panels pointing into every fold of the valley. There was a second one farther west, and a fiber line that followed the road, hugging the cliffs like a vein. The mayor called it future-proofing. The tourism board called it connectivity. Most residents called it normal. Only one man still called it fragile. His name was Elias Mercer, and he never raised his voice when he said it. Elias had lived in Grey Rock for 6 years, long enough to stop being the guy from the city, but not long enough to be fully absorbed by the town's confidence. He moved with the habits of someone who had spent his life listening for failure. When he walked into a room, his eyes always found the exits, the windows, the power outlets. If a ceiling fan clicked once every rotation, he noticed. If a radio in a diner had static under the music, he noticed. Elias used to work telecom infrastructure, the kind of work that never made headlines unless something went wrong. He helped plan relay routes in tough terrain, installed backup systems for hospitals, watched entire regions go dark because someone in a different country clicked the wrong setting. He'd been on call when storms tore towers down like toothpicks. He'd seen fiber lines severed by mudslides, rockfall, floodwater, and human stupidity. Grey Rock wasn't immune to any of that. It just hadn't paid the price yet. He lived on the edge of town in a small house with a shed behind it. The shed had been there when he bought the place, a windowless rectangle of wood and metal. He'd reinforced it quietly over the years, one improvement at a time. New locks, a proper grounding rod, shelving, a small ventilation fan. Most of the town assumed he stored tools and camping gear. They were only half right. Inside the shed was the radio room. It was not dramatic. It was not a bunker with steel doors and blinking lights like in movies. It was practical, clean, quiet. A long table lined one wall, and on it sat a compact VHF/UHF base station, a shortwave receiver, 2 handheld radios, a battery charger, and a neat binder labeled frequencies. There were maps laminated and taped to the wall, topographic sheets with trails, ridges, and landmarks marked in thin ink. Beside them hung a clipboard with call signs and a schedule. On the opposite wall was an old-fashioned metal mailbox bolted to the studs from the inside, its slot facing outward through a carefully cut opening. Under it sat a stack of blank message cards and a stamp pad, a hard copy system. If someone couldn't reach Elias by radio, they could walk here and drop a note. If Elias had a message for the town, he could post it. He'd built it because he didn't trust a single point of failure. He'd pitched it once at a town council meeting. Not with fear, not with drama. He'd spoken like an engineer, calm and careful. He explained how towers failed, how fiber snapped, how storms made people call all at once and jam networks even when hardware survived. He explained the difference between a convenience and a lifeline. The council listened politely. The mayor smiled too much. Someone asked if he was selling something. A woman in the second row laughed and said, "Is this like ham radio cosplay?" Another man joked, "Elias, we're not in the 70s. My phone can call satellites." Elias hadn't argued. He nodded as if they were right, because he understood something they didn't. People only respect redundancy after they've lost the first system. So he stopped pitching. He just built. He also trained, quietly, the few people who didn't laugh. There was Marta, the school secretary, who liked systems and schedules. There was Zane, a mechanic who could fix anything if you gave him time and the right parts. There was Harper, a volunteer firefighter who hated being helpless. None of them were survivalists. None of them wanted to imagine catastrophe. They just respected the way Elias prepared without performing. On Tuesday nights, they met in the shed. Elias showed them how to check battery levels, how to switch frequencies, how to speak clearly under stress. He made them practice message relay, short and exact. Name first, he'd say. Location. Need. No stories. Marta would roll her eyes, but follow the structure. Zane would make jokes until Elias looked at him, and then he'd stop. Harper asked practical questions. How far could the signal travel? What happened if the ridge blocked it? What if the battery died? Elias answered everything. He never promised miracles. He promised options. Outside the shed, the town kept living like the mountains were scenery, not machinery. People posted sunset photos. Tourists came for hiking trails and cabin weekends. The mayor posted announcements about a new cafe opening. The cell signal stayed full. The fiber line stayed intact. The river stayed in its channel. Until the week the rain didn't stop. It started as a steady drumming that made everyone feel cozy. Then it thickened into something heavier, a constant pressure in the air. The river turned louder. The soil on the slopes began to loosen in ways you couldn't see unless you knew what to look for. Elias knew. On the third day, he drove the road that led out of town and pulled over at the narrowest cliff section where the fiber line ran beneath a metal guardrail. He got out and walked with his head tilted, watching the rock face. He saw fresh cracks in the stone like hairline fractures in glass. He saw a bulge in the saturated dirt above the road, a subtle sagging that meant the slope was holding more weight than it could keep. He went home and checked his radios. He charged the handhelds fully. He topped off the spare batteries. He wrote a simple schedule on the clipboard, check-ins every 2 hours if the weather worsened. Then he did something he hadn't done in over a year. He drove to the town hall. The mayor's assistant tried to smile him away. Elias, we're a bit busy. The rain's caused a few. It's going to slide. Elias said, not loud, not rude, just certain, not a question of if. The slope at mile marker 14 is saturated. If it goes, it takes the road and the line. The assistant blinked. The line, the fiber, and likely the tower, depending on where it shears. The assistant hesitated like she was deciding whether to treat him as a nuisance or a warning sign. Eventually, she walked him into the meeting room where the mayor and 2 council members stood over maps and drainage plans, trying to make the rain fit into something they could budget for. Elias didn't waste time. You need a communication plan, he said. If phones die, people will panic. They'll flood emergency services. They'll drive the road and get caught. We should push a notice now. Keep people off the cliff road. Set a check-in protocol. The mayor exhaled and spread his hands. Elias, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but the county says the risk is moderate. We've got emergency alerts. We've got backup power at the station. Everyone has a phone. Everyone has a phone, Elias repeated. He looked around the room. That's not a plan. That's a belief. One of the council members, an older man named Dell, smirked. So what? We all come play radio in your shed. Elias kept his face neutral. If you don't want to use my system, build your own. But don't pretend the mountain cares what year it is. The mayor's smile tightened. We'll monitor it. The county has engineers. Elias nodded once. Good. He walked out. He didn't argue. Arguing would only make them defend their pride harder. He'd planted the warning. If they ignored it, the mountain would do the rest. That night, the rain changed texture. It wasn't just falling. It was pushing. Wind drove it sideways. Trees bowed. The river below town became a moving bruise, dark and fast. The power flickered once at 9:17 p.m., came back, flickered again at 9:23. At 9:41, Marta's phone buzzed with a county alert, flash flood watch. At 9:44, Harper received a call from the volunteer fire station. A small rockfall had hit the road near mile marker 12. Minor debris. Crews were going out. At 9:51, Elias was in his radio room, listening. He wasn't listening for voices. He was listening for the absence of them. A good network has a rhythm, a quiet hum, a predictable response. When you've lived inside systems long enough, you feel when something is about to break. At 10:06, the handheld on the table crackled. Elias, Harper's voice came through, clipped and tense. We're out near 12. It's not minor. The shoulder's soft. We're seeing water under the asphalt. Elias leaned forward. How many trucks? 2. And Dell's here too. He insisted. Elias closed his eyes for half a second. Tell him to back off the edge. The ground can give without warning. Harper hesitated. He's saying the county says it's fine. Harper, Elias said, voice steady. I'm telling you it's not. Silence. Then Harper again. Copy. Elias glanced at the binder. He checked the battery indicator. He looked at the maps. All the calm preparation that had felt almost silly in sunny weather suddenly had weight. Then the power cut, fully, like a switch. The house went dark. The fan stopped. The quiet became huge. Outside, the rain kept hammering, now without the soft accompaniment of town lights and distant engines. Elias stood still in the darkness, counting seconds. 1, 2, 3. His phone screen lit up automatically, searching for signal. No bars. He didn't react with surprise. He reacted with motion. He stepped into the shed, flipped on the emergency lantern, and the radio room glowed with practical light. The base station was already on battery backup. The shortwave receiver hissed softly. Elias keyed the mic. All stations, he said. This is Mercer Base. Check in. For a beat, only static answered. Then Marta's voice, shaky but controlled. Marta here. I'm at the school. We just lost power. Phones are not connecting. Copy, Elias said. Stay inside. Keep the doors locked. Count your people. Zane came next. Zane, garage. Power out. I can't reach anyone on my phone. Harper's voice followed, louder now, with wind in the background. Harper on the cliff road. We heard something, like a crack. Dell's truck just slid half a foot toward the edge. Elias's jaw tightened. Move away from the cliff. Now. Leave the cones. Leave everything. Harper was about to respond when the signal stuttered. A deep, distant sound rolled through the frequency, something between thunder and a collapsing building. It wasn't coming from the radio. It was coming from the mountain itself. Elias's lantern trembled slightly on the table. Then Harper's radio cut out mid-breath. Only static remained. Elias stared at the speaker, listening for a voice to return, and the valley answered him with the low, relentless roar of moving earth. He keyed the mic again, slower this time. Harper, he said. Respond. No answer. The static thickened, as if the air itself had been packed with dust. Elias turned his head toward the shed door. The rain hit it like fists. Somewhere out there, the road was either still there or it wasn't. And if the road was gone, Greyrock wasn't just without power. It was without a way out. Elias didn't waste time hoping. Hope was for later, after you'd done everything else. He switched to the secondary frequency, the one that bounced off the ridge line better when weather distorted the signal. He keyed the mic again. Harper, this is Mercer Base. If you hear me, transmit once. Just a click. Static. He listened, counting 3 breaths, 4. The rain hammered the roof so hard the shed seemed to shrink under it. Zane, Elias said. You copy. Copy. Zane answered immediately, relief in his voice. I'm here. Marta. I'm here, Marta said. Her voice sounded like she was trying not to let fear turn into noise. Elias pressed the talk button again. We have a likely slide on the cliff road. Harper's last position was near mile marker 12. No contact since the sound event. I need someone to physically check the station and the clinic. Not to play hero. To assess and report. Zane spoke before Marta could. I can go. I've got the truck. No, Elias said. Not yet. Roads are unstable. If the shoulder fails, you become a second emergency. We move like a system, not like individuals. Zane's silence was immediate and resentful. Elias softened his tone without becoming gentle. I need you ready. Tools packed. Fuel. If we have to move people or clear debris, you're essential. But you don't drive blind into a slope that's actively shifting. Zane exhaled. Copy. Elias looked at the clipboard schedule and crossed it out. The old plan assumed gradual deterioration. This was faster. He keyed again. Marta, school inventory. How many are with you? There was a rustle, muffled footsteps. Then Marta returned. 22. Mostly staff. A few people ran here because it's brick and has a generator. Does the generator start? Not yet. We're trying. Don't force it, Elias said. If it's flooded or the intake's blocked, you can ruin it. Wait for daylight. Keep people together. Then he turned his attention to the one thing the town's future-proofing had not included: manual information control. When phones fail, rumors fill the gap like water. People would speculate. They would assume the worst. They would drive toward danger because movement feels like control. If Greyrock didn't get a message out fast, fear would do more damage than the slide. Elias pulled the stack of blank message cards and wrote, in heavy block letters, power out. Cell service down. Stay off Cliff Road. Check in at school or clinic. Radio updates every 30 minutes. He tore the card cleanly, slid it into the metal mailbox slot from inside, then stepped out into the rain with a hooded coat and a headlamp. The night hit him like cold hands. The mailbox opening faced the street, an intentionally low-tech bulletin. Anyone walking by could see the message without needing signal, battery, or permission. He posted 2 more cards, one at the community center door, one at the gas station window, then returned to the shed drenched, his boots tracking mud. Back on the radio, he tried again. "All stations," he said. "If you are on this frequency and able, identify yourself and location. Keep it short." A new voice crackled in, panicked. This is Laura. I'm on Cedar Lane. My husband went out to check the road, and he's not back. My phone doesn't." "Laura," Elias said firmly, "stay inside. Do not go out looking. That's how people disappear in weather like this." "He won't answer me," she said, breathing fast. "He thinks I'm overreacting." "Then he's wrong," Elias said. "And if he's smart, he'll come back. If he's not, you still don't go out. Understood?" She hesitated, then, "Understood." Elias kept going. He pulled the binder toward him and ran the town like a switchboard, because that was what it needed now. He assigned check-ins, asked who had medical training, who had generators, who had fuel, who had spare blankets. He didn't ask people to be brave. He asked them to be useful. And as he did it, one ugly fact kept pressing on him. The radio network was working, but only because Elias had built it alone. If he went down, the system would collapse. He stared at the clipboard with call signs. He had trained Marta, Zane, and Harper, but none of them could coordinate the whole town yet. They'd never had to. A town can survive a landslide. It can even survive a blackout. What it struggles to survive is the moment leadership becomes a vacuum. The first real signs of panic came before midnight. Zane called in. "Elias, I've got people outside my garage. They're asking for gas. Cash. Cards. Doesn't matter. The pump won't run without power. They're getting loud." "Don't open the doors," Elias said. "Speak through the glass. Tell them fuel is locked. If they try to break in, you broadcast it. You do not escalate first." Zane's laugh was sharp. "You think they care about escalation?" "I care," Elias said. "Because once it becomes a fight, it stays a fight. Keep it calm as long as you can." Then Marta's voice came in, tight. "Elias, we've got a bigger problem. People are arriving at the school. Families. Some of them heard the road is gone. Someone said the town's flooding. None of it's confirmed, but they're scared. Put them in the gym," Elias said. "Lights off if you can't power them. Keep everyone together. Assign 1 person per door. Not as guards, just as calm faces." Marta swallowed. "They're asking who's in charge." Elias paused, just long enough for the truth to land. "Tell them we're coordinating over radio. Tell them to listen for updates. Tell them they're safer if they follow instructions. And if they don't, then you stay calm anyway," Elias said. "You don't argue with fear. You outlast it." He kept reaching for Harper. Nothing. At 12:37 a.m., a faint signal brushed the edge of the frequency like a hand on glass. Elias snapped to attention. "Harper," he said immediately. "Harper, transmit." The signal broke into words, half swallowed by static. "Merc. Base. Harper." "I hear you," Elias said. "Location." A long pause. The rain on the roof sounded like a crowd. Then Harper again, strained, breathy. "We're not on the road anymore." Elias's stomach tightened. "Explain." "We slid," Harper said. "The shoulder went. We got out. Dell didn't." His truck, a burst of static swallowed the rest. Elias leaned closer, voice controlled but sharp. "Harper, say again. Dell didn't what?" Harper's voice returned, smaller now. His truck went over. "It's down the slope. I can't see it. I can hear it sometimes. Like metal settling." Elias's mind pictured it instantly. The cliff face, the wet rock, the drop. A truck lodged among trees or smashed against stone. "Are you injured?" Elias asked. "My arm," Harper said. "Cut. Not bad. But we're stuck above the slide. The road's gone behind us and ahead of us. We can't climb back in the dark." "Is anyone with you?" Elias asked. 2 volunteers, Harper said. "And Dell's gone." Elias closed his eyes for 1 second. He couldn't let that become the center of the story yet. Not while people were still alive and movable. "Listen," Elias said, "you hold position. Do not try to traverse the slope at night. If you move, you fall. You understand?" "I understand," Harper said, voice shaking with anger and fear. "But Elias, the towers, what about them?" Elias asked. Harper's voice was suddenly urgent. "The east tower is leaning. I can see it from here. The ground around its base is cracked. If it goes, a sound came through Harper's mic then, not static, not rain. A deep, tearing groan, like the mountain taking a breath before it breaks. Harper's voice rose. Elias, it's moving again. The transmission cut out. Elias stared at the radio, frozen for half a beat. Then he turned the knob, cycling frequencies like it could change reality. Nothing. The east tower leaning meant the town's phones were not coming back soon. And if the tower fell, it could take power lines, block the only remaining pass, crush whatever crews the county eventually sent. Elias forced his breathing steady and keyed the mic. All stations, he said. Listen carefully. We are not getting cell service back tonight. Possibly not tomorrow. The cliff road is unsafe. The east tower may fail. You stay where you are unless you have a direct instruction. Shelter at the school or clinic if you have to move. Do not go to the gas station. Do not go to the road. We will do this in daylight, together. He heard voices overlapping, questions, fear, someone asking about loved ones. Elias cut through it with structure. Stop transmitting unless you have critical information, he said. If you are safe and sheltered, stay off the air. If you have injury, fire, flood in your home, or you see movement on the slopes, transmit. Otherwise, listen. He turned to the maps. He traced the ridge line where the tower stood, the slope that fed into the river, the road that was now likely severed. He could feel the shape of the next 12 hours forming. Daylight would reveal damage. Daylight would also reveal people. If panic took hold, people would swarm whatever looked like authority. They would demand decisions. They would demand answers. Elias could give them decisions. He could give them tasks. But he couldn't give them what they wanted most, reassurance. At 2:18 a.m., a new voice came in, thin, young, almost whispering. This is Jonah. I'm at the clinic. Elias leaned forward. Jonah, status. Jonah swallowed. We've got a patient. A woman. She's pregnant, and she's bleeding. The doctor says we might need to move her, but we can't reach the hospital in the next town. Elias felt the town shift under his feet, not physically, but morally. This was what the system was for. Not comfort, not pride. Time. How far along? Elias asked. 7 months, Jonah said. And the generator at the clinic keeps sputtering. We're on emergency lights. Elias looked at the map again. The hospital was down the road that might be gone. He had to choose between two bad options. Keep her in a clinic with failing power, or attempt a dangerous movement through unstable terrain. He keyed the mic, voice low and precise. Jonah, he said, keep her stable. Do not move her until first light unless she crashes. I will get you power support and a transport plan. Tell the doctor I will speak directly on this channel. Jonah's breath was audible. Okay. Elias turned to the clipboard and wrote the first rule of the next day in ink. No one moves without purpose. Then he wrote the second rule. Purpose starts with life. Outside, the rain didn't slow. It intensified, as if the mountain wanted to finish what it started. Elias checked his battery reserves again, then opened a storage bin and pulled out a small, weatherproof handheld transceiver he rarely used, stronger output, longer reach. He stared at it, thinking about the east tower leaning, about Harper trapped above the slide, about a pregnant woman bleeding in a clinic that might go dark. He keyed the mic one more time. All stations, he said. At first light, we begin organized response. Until then, hold your shelter and conserve power. Mercer Base will remain on air. He set the radio down and listened to the silence between transmissions, the kind of silence that wasn't peace. Then, faintly, so faint he almost dismissed it, the shed's exterior mailbox made a soft metallic click. Someone had used the slot. Someone had walked through the storm to leave a hard copy message. Elias stood very still, then moved to the wall, pulled the note from the inside of the metal box, and unfolded it under the lantern. The handwriting was messy, rushed, terrified. It said only, "The mountain is open." And beneath it, one more line. We heard people out there. Elias read the note twice, not because the words were complicated, but because the implications were. The mountain is open. In a place like Greyrock, the phrase could mean one of two things. Either a fissure had broken through somewhere, an exposed cut in the slope where the earth had torn away, or someone had found a new path, a gap that shouldn't exist. The second line made it worse. We heard people out there. That wasn't an engineering problem. That was a human problem. Elias set the note beside the radio and stared at the laminated map of the valley until the lines and contour marks felt like a pulse. There were old mining cuts in these mountains, abandoned access tunnels from decades ago, sealed officially but never truly erased. People joked about them like campfire myths. Kids dared each other to hike near them. Tourists asked about haunted shafts. Elias had asked about them when he moved here. Most people had shrugged. One collapsed, they'd said. Nobody goes there. Nobody, until desperation made people move like water into whatever crack the world offered. He keyed the mic. All stations, he said. This is Mercer Base. I need one person at a time. Marta, respond. I'm here, Marta answered immediately. Her voice sounded rough, like she hadn't slept at all. Did anyone come to the school overnight, claiming they saw people moving on the slopes? Elias asked. A pause. Yes, she said. 2 hikers. They said they heard voices near the old logging trail. They thought it was rescue teams. Elias felt cold settle behind his ribs. Did they describe where? Near the old quarry access, Marta said. Above the creek. Elias looked at the map again. The quarry access wasn't far from the sealed mine cut. Zane, he said, copy. I'm here, Zane said. Any movement near your side of town? Strangers. Zane hesitated. I saw headlights at around 1. Not on the main road. Like someone trying to drive the service track behind the gas station. Then it stopped. Elias's mind filled in the rest. People trying routes that weren't meant for traffic, pushing machines and bodies into land that was already breaking. Jonah, Elias called. Clinic status. Jonah came back instantly, desperate for structure. Still bleeding. Slower now. Doctor says we need a stable power source. The generator sputtered again. Copy, Elias said. Hold. Do not move her yet. He took one breath, then made the decision he'd been avoiding. He couldn't run Greyrock from a shed forever. Not when fear was spreading and decisions were becoming physical. If the town was going to survive the next 24 hours, the radio room needed to become a command center that other people could operate, not just listen to. Elias keyed up again. All stations. At dawn, primary coordination point is the school gym. Marta will lead shelter operations. Zane will lead mechanical support. Jonah will remain at the clinic as medical relay. I'm coming to the school with the main radio set. We are moving from individual panic to organized response. He paused, then added the part that would either calm people or make them hate him. If you ignore instructions and move into unsafe areas, we will not chase you in the dark or in active slide zones. This isn't cruelty. It's survival math. The radio fell quiet. Then a few clipped acknowledgments came in. People didn't like being told no, but in a crisis, a clear no often felt safer than a vague maybe. Outside, the rain finally started to thin. Not stop, just loosen its grip. The darkness shifted from absolute to gray. Elias packed with the same methodical calm he'd practiced in normal weeks, because panic was a luxury he couldn't afford. He shut down secondary devices, kept the base station on battery, loaded the binder, the spare handhelds, the maps, and his weatherproof transceiver into a hard case. He wrote a final message card and slid it into the mailbox. Radio moved TO school. Go there for instructions. Then he stepped into the morning. Greyrock looked wounded. Branches littered the road. Mud streamed down driveways like veins. The river had swelled into a violent, brown surge. And above everything, the mountain wore a new scar, an open slope where earth had slid away in the night, exposing raw rock and broken roots. The east tower was still standing, but just barely. Even from town, Elias could see the tilt. It leaned like a tired person refusing to sit down. He walked fast, head down, not because he was afraid of the town, but because he didn't want to meet the eyes of people who needed him to promise certainty. He couldn't promise certainty. He could promise effort, planning, coordination. At the school, the gym had become a shelter with the speed of necessity. Mats lined the floor. Families huddled under blankets. A few lanterns burned. Marta moved through the room with a clipboard like she'd been doing it her whole life, directing people without raising her voice. When Elias entered, wet and carrying the radio case, heads turned. A man near the bleachers recognized him and scoffed loudly enough for others to hear. Look who it is. The radio guy. Another voice rose, bitter. If the town had listened to the county, we wouldn't be in this mess. Elias didn't react. He'd learned long ago that when systems fail, People search for someone to blame because blame feels like control. Marta met Elias at the center line of the gym floor, her eyes tired but sharp. "We have 89 people here," she said. "More on the way. Some won't come in because they think we're exaggerating." Elias set the case down and opened it. The base station came out like a tool, not a symbol. "We don't have time to convince everyone," Elias said. "We have time to save the ones we can." He turned toward the crowd. He didn't stand on a chair. He didn't demand attention. He simply spoke in a voice that carried because it was calm. "Phones are down because the mountain cut the line," he said. "The road is damaged and unsafe. We have injuries. We have one high-risk medical case at the clinic. We will survive this if we operate like a community and not like a mob." Someone shouted, "Who made you boss?" Elias looked toward the voice without hostility. "Nobody," he said. "The mountain did. It removed the systems you depended on. This is the one that remains." He held up a handheld radio. "This isn't old," he continued. "It's resilient." The room shifted. Not agreement. Not admiration. Something more practical. Attention. Elias walked to Marta and handed her a radio. "Your shelter. You keep people warm, fed, organized. Any conflict comes to you first." He handed another to a tall man with a firefighter jacket, someone Marta had identified as reliable. "You handle security outside. Not force. Presence. You keep people from rushing the road." He handed one to a woman in scrubs. "You coordinate supplies and medical needs here. Identify anyone with insulin, oxygen, or other critical requirements." People started to move. Slowly at first, then faster. Tasks gave them something to hold on to. Elias turned the frequency knob and broadcast to Jonah. "Clinic, this is Mercer. I'm at the school. Status update." Jonah's voice came back strained. "She's stable for now. But we need power. The generator is dying." Elias looked to Zane, who had just arrived, face streaked with mud, eyes furious and focused. "You ready?" Elias asked. Zane nodded once. "Tell me what breaks first." Elias didn't smile. He didn't have the energy. "We don't know," he said. "So we assume everything breaks. We prioritize the clinic." Within minutes, Elias, Zane, and 2 volunteers formed a small transport unit. They didn't take a convoy. They took one truck with chains, tools, and a portable battery bank Elias had built years ago for his own shed. Redundancy stacked on redundancy. As they drove slowly toward the clinic, the scale of the landslide became clear. The main cliff road out of Grey Rock wasn't just blocked. It was gone in places. A section had collapsed into the valley like a bitten-out chunk. Mud and rock buried the fiber conduit entirely. And near the east ridge, the cell tower's base sat in cracked, slumping earth. It was still standing, but every minute it remained upright was borrowed time. At the clinic, Jonah looked like he'd aged a year overnight. The doctor, an older woman named Dr. Vance, met Elias in the hallway, her face blunt with exhaustion. "If we lose power," she said, "we lose her." Elias didn't ask for more details. He didn't need them. He looked at Zane and nodded toward the generator shed. Zane went to work like a man who needed his hands to stay busy so his mind didn't break. He checked fuel lines, cleared a clogged intake, rerouted a frayed cable, patched what could be patched. Elias hauled the portable battery bank inside and connected it to the clinic's emergency circuit with the careful confidence of someone who had done this in worse places. The lights steadied. Not bright, but reliable. Dr. Vance exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for hours. "That buys us time," she said. Elias nodded. "Time is the currency," he replied. "Spend it carefully." Back at the school, the town was beginning to behave like a system. People signed in. Supplies were inventoried. A schedule went up on the wall for radio updates. Marta held the line against rumor by replacing it with information. But the note about voices in the mountains still sat in Elias's mind like a splinter. After stabilizing the clinic, Elias returned to the school and called for a small recon team. Not to investigate out of curiosity, to prevent a new disaster. If strangers were moving through old tunnels or exposed cuts, they could be trapped, or they could be coming toward town for supplies. In either case, the town needed to know before fear filled in the blanks. Elias assigned Harper's rescue as the first priority, because Harper and the volunteers were stranded above the slide and daylight made movement possible. A second team, led by the firefighter jacket man, prepared ropes and harnesses. Elias stayed on radio, coordinating from the school while Zane positioned equipment. When Harper finally came back on air, clearer now, closer, Elias felt a tight knot loosen. "We see you," Harper said, voice raw. "We're on a ledge. We can climb down if you guide us." "We'll guide you," Elias said. "Slow. One at a time. You don't rush gravity." It took 3 hours. It felt like 10. When Harper finally walked into the gym, arm bandaged, face hollow, the crowd surged toward him with questions. Elias stepped in front of the noise like a wall. "Later," he said. "He's alive. That's the only headline right now." Then Harper handed Elias something. Wet, crumpled paper. "We found this," Harper said quietly, near where Dell's truck went over. It was pinned under a rock, like it had been dropped. Elias unfolded it carefully. It wasn't a note from a local. The handwriting was unfamiliar, the words short, the tone urgent. "Meet at the open cut. We have a way through. Bring food." Elias's eyes lifted to Harper. "Did you see anyone?" Harper shook his head. "No, but we heard voices in the fog." The gym felt colder, because now the mystery wasn't rumor. It was evidence. Elias walked to the radio table and keyed the mic. "All stations," he said. "New directive. No one goes near the old quarry access or any exposed cuts in the slope. If you hear voices in the woods, you do not approach. You report by radio." A man in the crowd shouted, "Those could be people who need help." Elias looked at him. "They might be," he said. "Or they might be people who will take what you have and leave you with nothing. We don't gamble the town's survival on assumptions." He paused, letting the sentence land. "We help with structure," he continued. "We help when we can do it safely. We don't walk into unknown terrain because guilt told us to." That afternoon, the rain eased enough that the county's distant emergency channel finally crackled with a weak transmission. Not a call, not a rescue team, just a recorded message looping through static. Roads compromised, response delayed, shelter in place. Grey Rock was on its own. Elias didn't look surprised. He looked relieved. Because reliance is fragile. Ownership isn't. He gathered Marta, Zane, Harper, Jonah, and Dr. Vance in a small circle near the radio table and spoke low enough that only they could hear. "We're not waiting to be saved," he said. "We're becoming stable." Marta's eyes narrowed. "How?" Elias tapped the binder. "We control information. We control movement. We preserve life. We ration supplies. We keep the clinic powered. We keep people busy. We keep the radio running." Harper swallowed, anger simmering. And the voices. Elias looked toward the windows where the mountain loomed, quiet now, like it had finished shouting for the moment. "We don't chase ghosts," he said, "but we don't ignore them either." As dusk approached, Elias climbed to the roof access above the school with the weatherproof transceiver and aimed an antenna toward the ridge. He pushed the signal harder, farther, searching for any human voice on the other side of the valley. For a moment, he heard nothing but distant hiss. Then, faintly, a reply. Not from the county, not from the next town, from somewhere in the mountain itself. A voice, low and clipped, speaking like someone who didn't want to be heard. "Grey Rock, you listening?" Elias's spine tightened. He keyed the mic once. "This is Mercer Base," he said. "Identify yourself." A pause. Then the voice again, closer now, as if it had moved nearer to his frequency on purpose. "We know you have power." Elias held his breath, eyes on the darkening tree line. "And we know you have food." The transmission clicked off. Elias didn't move for a long moment. The wind carried the smell of wet earth and pine. The mountain stood there, silent again, pretending it hadn't just spoken. Below him, in the gym, families slept under blankets. Marta counted supplies. Zane checked tools. Jonah watched the clinic channel. A town held together by one thin thread of signal and discipline. Elias climbed down from the roof slowly. Not because he was tired, but because he could feel the next phase of the disaster taking shape. The storm had cut them off. Now something else had found them. He returned to the radio table, looked at the binder, and spoke into the mic so the whole shelter could hear. "All stations," he said. "Night protocol begins now. No one leaves the building after dark. Doors secured. Check-ins every hour. Grey Rock stays quiet, stays together, and stays ready." He released the button and looked at Marta. "They mocked the radio room," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "But it wasn't built for storms." Marta's eyes met his. "What was it built for?" Elias looked toward the mountain. "For what comes after," he said.